Right, good afternoon, everyone. I think hopefully most people should be here by now. So let's kick off proceedings, I suppose. Thanks again for joining today's webinar. Obviously appreciate everyone's incredibly busy at the moment, so appreciate you taking the time out, especially over your lunch hour. So my name's Simon Edwards. I've been with the business about 8 years now. So I came from CMI, who were an acquisition from sort of earlier on in the year. And I currently head up one of the security teams here at BCN. So my team are responsible for delivering cyber essentials, managed vulnerability scanning, automated pen tests, dark web scanning, and a few others. So we sort of cover quite a few areas, really. I think we all kind of appreciate how important sort of IT security is in today's world. I think ultimately, which is kind of why we're all here. But what we're sort of seeing is that businesses, sort of going back over the years, it was always an element of assigning a budget to IT. But now specifically what we're seeing is businesses are having to assign a very specific budget to security. So on that way, we sort of have CloudGuard here with us, who will be predominantly running sort of today's session. So we've been working with CloudGuard, or very closely with CloudGuard for quite a while now, and they help us deliver some of our security services. So for those of you who don't know CloudGuard are kind of what's referred to as MSSP. So they specialised in sort of security services. So the format for today's webinar is actually potentially going to be a little bit different to what you may have been expecting, maybe a little bit more interactive. So I think on that note, maybe I'll hand over to Connor and you can obviously delve in and give us a bit more on that.
Yep, brilliant. Thanks, Simon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the BCN and CloudGuard webinar for Will Your Business Survive a Ransomware Attack? So like Simon said, this is going to be a little bit different, hopefully an enjoyable one, a little bit fun. First 20 minutes, we're going to walk through cybersecurity threat landscape. So what it is, a little bit about ransomware, a little bit about phishing, that sort of thing. The next 20 minutes is going to be a bit of an interactive. We're going to break out into two groups and we'll manage all that for you. We'll move everybody into two separate groups. I will take one group, and then Vaughn, so Vaughn's the SOC lead for CloudGuard, he will take the other group. And what we're going to do there, we're going to do a little bit of a tabletop exercise. So if anybody hasn't done one before, don't worry about it. We're going to walk through what that is, what it means. And it's not anything too serious. It's a little bit of fun. Trying to gamify incident response, make it interactive. So one of CloudGuard's engagements and advisory services we do is build IR plans for customers and take them through tabletops and what you would do in your business, how you would survive an attack, have you got everything in place, all that sort of thing. So we'll walk you through that, and then we will all join back into the webinar like we are now. Vaughn then will take over key takeaways, lessons learned from the scenarios, what to do going forward, some actions for you as your business, to take back, look at where do you sit with that, how could you do better, and then we'll hand over Curtis to do a bit of a threat simulation, so a bit of an exercise around account takeovers. So we do ask, hopefully, during the breakout sessions that you can put your microphones on, your cameras on, please. It's an interactive session. I understand if you can't put your camera on, but please chat away. Me and Vaughn, it'll be a very informal conversation. We want everybody sort of talking and bringing ideas to the table. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. I am going to walk through some more slides. So we're going to start off with the threat landscape. So what is cyber? What does it look like? Where are we at right now? So we'll do a bit of a 2023 recap. A lot of stats here. Feel free to read through them. I'm going to touch on some of them. All this will be available after if you want to spend some more time or ask more questions or delve into a few different areas. So 36% of all data breaches involve phishing, so hence why we're focusing today on phishing and ransomware. So phishing is one of the biggest sort of attack vectors that leads to ransomware through an organization. It's one of the ones that we all fall victim to. It's very easily done. There's a lot of proactive measures you can take, and Vaughn's going to touch on them later on. But it's a huge stat. So 36% of all data breaches are involved in an email coming in, thinking it's someone it's not, clicking a link, going somewhere, putting your credentials in, all that sort of thing. And then 23% of all emails that are sent out actually are sent with that malicious intent behind it. So they want you to engage with them. They want to pretend they're someone they're not. Again, a huge number. If you think day to day, how many emails do you send? Thinking that 23% of that are actually, someone trying to get your credentials, someone trying to get you to put your credit card details in. And then 19% of all cyber attacks, no matter what they end up being, how they originated, all involve some form of credentials. So that's your username and your password being handed over to an attacker. The most popular day, it really shouldn't be a huge surprise to people, is Amazon Prime weekend. One of the biggest ones. I'm sure everybody's seen them. Hey, you need to update your credit card details. You need to, oh, we forgot to send you this. Let's look at it. Is one of the biggest popular days for phishing and emails that come in. And the most targeted malware application, so an attachment thing that's actually built with malicious intent behind it. You might get an attachment with a Word document. That's one of the biggest and largest applications to deliver malware over as well. 96% of all UK businesses are targeted by phishing. Everybody gets it, whether it's sort of corporate or personal emails. You're going to see junk come in. You're going to see things come in, spam, all that sort of stuff. And the top 3 tactics in a successful attack are phishing, malware, and ransomware. Now, you can tie malware and ransomware together pretty much. So that's why we're covering sort of all 3 in this webinar. Again, loads of stats here. All this is available after. If you have any questions, let us know. But I want to touch a bit more. So we're here today to talk about how do you survive it? What do you do next? What does it mean? What could it look like for your environment? But what actually is ransomware first to start off with? So it's a type of malware that can either disable systems or the access to data. So your Word documents, your files, your share files, whether you use SharePoint or any other sort of document structure, it's having access to that, taking control over it and encrypting it, which means locking it down. You can't access it, you can't use it. And usually it always involves some sort of paid ransom. So I'm sure everybody's aware of that, right? So they want something back to give you your data back. That's usually how it goes. We're going to talk a little bit more about attack vectors. So an attack vector is, how do I end up getting ransomware? What are the ways that I could eventually be, infiltrated through ransomware? The first one and the biggest one is obviously phishing emails. So usually it's a click a link, you put in your password, you think it's actually Microsoft, and nothing else happens. Maybe the page doesn't refresh or it exits off, and you think, oh, okay, I'll try again, or I'll not do that again. What you usually don't know is ransomware usually goes relatively slow, so that's fine. The attacker now maybe has your credentials. They'll take that, they hold it for a few weeks maybe, and then they go and do something about it. Very slow sometimes, or they go the opposite. They go really, really fast. They take it, and before you can even think, it's already done. They've got your credentials and they're in your environment. So phishing emails is usually the most popular attack vector. You've then got RDP and credential abuse. Again, so harvesting your passwords, your usernames. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use to say, what about my personal email address? Is that clean? Has that been involved in a data breach before? Other different credentials and abuse of that. Being able to use RDP channels, such an easy thing for attackers to get into your environment and then kick off ransomware. And the third one I'm going to talk about is unpatched vulnerabilities. Such a huge thing. So vulnerability management, Simon touched on it as well at the start. Vulnerability management is attackers are constantly looking to say, okay, what's new now? What's new now? What could someone not have patched yet? Patch means update, fix. And how could I use that to exploit it? So how could I use that in a bad way to get into the environment through that unpatched vulnerability and then deploy my ransomware? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers behind ransomware attacks, just so that people realize the significance of ransomware and what it can actually do to an organization. So the ICO reported, so this is in the last 24 months, you'll see the graph with 2 different bars. So orange is ransomware and the blue is total incidents. And if you look down the left-hand side, you'll see the different industries. So you've got government, utilities, legal, charitable and voluntary, education, retail and marketing having a huge number of total incidents. Now, It varies per different industry, but you'll see that largely and mostly through all these, ransomware takes up probably 30 to 50% of most of the total incidents that they experience. So an incident could be anything. They could have had some form of cyber issue. It's not always ransomware, there's other ones out there. It just shows the significance, and what we're trying to focus on today is how do we combat that? How do we mitigate it? How do we get around it? What can we do just to bolster our posture and make it, harder for an attacker to get into our environment? And then another graph as well, 1 in 3 cyber incidents are ransomware attacks. So this shows over the last 5 years, and you'll see sort of the progression for a start and how much more ransomware is happening. And then also you'll see even in 2023 alone, we're only halfway, 2/3 through the year. And it already is matching both 2019, 2020, and already nearly at 2021 for the full year. So it's showing the importance of this. The progression is huge. It's becoming more complex. It's becoming more sophisticated. Makes it harder to defend against, and it keeps people like FlyGuard on their toes on how do we, evolve? How do we make sure we can protect against this? But it is so common. And then a little bit more just around ransomware. So again, we'll start at the graph on the right-hand side, splitting into quarters this time, still taking it over the 5 years. You'll see in 2019, a very, very small number per quarter, as expected. 2020 and gradually increases up to 2023 where we're at right now. We don't have the stats yet for Q3, obviously, but already we've overtook, the previous years by a massive margin for just the half. And people think about ransomware, and usually they just think straight to the cost of the ransom. So how much is it? How much do I have to pay? Do I pay or not? All these questions, and that definitely relevant. But there's a lot of other additional damage that can happen to a ransomware attack, and a lot of other factors that come into play. So you'll see I put down a few different points of things that can happen during a ransomware attack and things you have to think of in addition to just the ransom. It could be the loss of data. Now, whether that's financial or reputational or regulatory based, the loss of data is obviously a huge thing whenever it's exfiltrated from an environment. Reputational damage can be huge sometimes. It depends how quick you get the ransomware, where it goes to, how far it spreads. But the reputational damage can be huge for some organizations, and we'll touch a little bit on sort of major incidents that we've seen in the news. And then operational downtime costs, what could it mean for your business? You can't really put a number on how long you're going to be out for if you're out. It could just be a few hours. You could be, lucky and we could get back up pretty quickly. It could be days, it could be weeks. That obviously suffers a large cost to a lot of organizations, depending on industry and what they do. Repairing of systems, you could decide I'm just gonna, wipe out all my laptops. I'm gonna just bring in a new set, and there's a cost to that. I'm not going to rely on my backups. I'm not going to clean my devices. I'm just going to buy a whole new set of infrastructure, put it in place. That's my fastest way to get up again. There could be extra incident response costs. You might have to call in forensics. You might need to, lean on your cyber insurance for that. You might need additional, days from an incident responder. A lot of that can also be costly. Extra security measures as well. So things like I have a SIEM, so a platform that ingests all my data, and it helps me understand how I'm doing. It helps give me correlation between events. It tells it tells the CloudGuard SOC what is bad, what's happening, what should we do, what should we inform the customer about. We could decide following that incident that actually visibility is not good enough. We need to go here, we need to go there. That could cost extra. There's legal costs as well if it goes that far, and there's obviously regulatory fines if it gets that far as well. Something really important to think about in ransomware is who you regulate it by. Are you aware of them? Are you aware of what their circulars are? Are you aware of all that sort of information? Again, something to think about. It's not just the ransom fee that everybody goes straight to. There's a lot of other additional costs that come into play. And then we're going to touch really quickly on ransomware in its many forms. So ransomware actually, it's more got 4, but we'll talk about just the first 3. So we'll talk about single extortion, double extortion, and triple. So whenever ransomware sort of started, I'm going to say back in the days, it started out as single extortion. So it was just attackers came in, they encrypted your files, and they asked for some money. And usually you decide, am I going to do it? Am I not? I'll use a backup. It started to evolve, then they became more sophisticated, and they started into double extortion. So double extortion is when I come into your environment as an attacker, and then I encrypt your files. You'll see on your desktop all your file names change, and you'll have appendices added to them. You'll start to notice strange activity. You might get the ransomware message coming up saying, hey, here's how you pay, you've been locked out. And that's the encryption. So they've done that. But then they start it into double extortion. So they then take your data as well. So not only do they lock you out from it, they also exfiltrate it. So they take it out of your environment, they store it, they use it to as leverage over the ransom and to get you to pay. They then evolve now into triple extortion. Triple extortion is when they do both of the above. They both encrypt and they exfiltrate. So they have it, they store it, they maybe have it on the dark web, but then they start to probe at you as a customer, and they say, what else could we do to put the pressure on here? So say you're a service provider, they might try and do a DDoS attack against you. So that means they'll try and take down your website, they'll try and take down however you function or make money. And that's putting the extra bit of pressure on to say, if we just pay this ransomware, we're done. We're past this now. So it's slowly evolving into different ways and different means of how much they can get a business to pay their ransomware. So that's single, double, and triple. It's something to just remember as we move into the scenarios later on in the webinar. And then some common types. A few different things. We'll not go through them all. But ransomware as a service, it's a massive thing, especially over the years. It's became a huge thing, and ransomware alone, criminals it's all financial motivated. There's huge amounts of money to be made in ransomware from these organizations, and it's a huge business environment. If you look into it deep enough, you'll find different chains and different gangs that do it. But ransomware as a service is where you've got people that just give subscriptions. Hey, well, we've got this, you can buy it off us, you can use that as a subscription-based model. You can go and deploy that ransomware wherever you want to. We'll just give you everything you need to do it. You take it, it's very simple, go and deploy it in customer X, Y, and Z. We don't mind, but we'll take a portion of your ransom for that. We'll take a bit of, that's their motive. So yeah, percentage of the profits go to the originator, the person that's made the scripts, that's made the malware, the deployment kits, all that sort of stuff, and they just sell it out. Easier for them because they don't have to do the actual work. Other stuff like crypto ransomware, I'm sure people have heard of before. Not as sort of the last few years, it's slowly declining a little bit, but using apps, emails, websites for exfiltration via crypto. Locker ransomware and scareware, so social engineering, social media, all that sort of stuff, compromise credentials, lots and lots of different types. They're all very similar and means the patterns follow the same. The single, double, and triple extortion is what they're trying to do. Going to touch really briefly on the R models. This is it's taken from the Lockheed Martin kill chain, and I don't really expect anyone to know too much about it, but it's a way of understanding from a defensive side of how do we be better in measuring things like ransomware. So Lockheed Martin kill chain takes you through an attack from start to finish, from reconnaissance and visibility, right through to the end where an attacker takes all your data out of your environment. So you'll see here as we build this chart, you've got real-time monitoring. That's things like a SIEM. That's things like a security product in your environment that's pulling in your information from your critical assets, your applications, whatever it is really, really important to you to function as a business. That's what you're storing in there. Now, that's correlating, that's bringing up alerts that there's a SOC at the other side of that, a security operations center, that are then triaging those alerts, saying what's good and what's bad, what should we do differently, what should you know about, what do you care about, oh, hey, this is really, really bad. And that's the real-time monitoring. Then you've got the visibility and the identification, which brings you into React. So largely this is based on automation. So CloudGuard have sort of thought about the Lockheed Martin kill chain and thought about how can we take that and instead build it into a more automated flow. And that's where React comes in. So we can then start to identify things. What's happened, what's been done, what have we seen before, what does it look like based on your logs? And then you've got respond. So at that stage, the attacker is starting to detonate now. They're in your environment and they're going to throw little bits and pieces here and there, going to kick things off. You're going to see stuff start to happen. You'll hear users complain about their laptops being really slow or not being able to log in or files being locked out. And that's where an automated response is so, so important. Being able to respond really quickly to that and say, hey, we've got the measures in place to stop that or contain or isolate that device so it doesn't spread throughout your environment. And that takes us on to stage 4, which is isolate and remove, taking what you've seen happen and removing it, getting rid of it. We don't want that anymore. 5 is restrict. If you can't remove it all, it's been able to restrict it at least to a portion of your environment. And then 6 is to remediate, get rid of it completely, separate, all that sort of stuff. The idea of the model is to help understand from attackers' perspective what happens. What do you walk through? What does it look like? What do they do on a day-to-day basis in ransomware? And then what we're trying to do to this is apply our automation and our human expertise to say, how do we build a SOC platform that can react, respond, remove, restrict, and remediate all of these threats to your environment in an automated manner, so that time is of the essence in these things, and you want to make sure that it's not days and weeks to find this. You want to make sure it's pretty quick. So a simple touch on that. Then recent ransomware attack. So I want to touch really briefly on this just to give an idea of what's happening out there. Not sure if anybody have seen or heard about these sort of things. I'll touch on them again pretty briefly, and we'll show what it's been looked like. So MGM reported on the 11th of September. You'll see in the left-hand side, Black Cat claimed. So that's the ransomware group that have said, hey, we done this. This was us. We're really proud of it. We've made a massive effect. It's spread worldwide on the news. It's huge operational downtime costs for MGM. And the SEC, the American regulatory body behind it, is expecting it to be $100 million cost behind that to MGM. That was from a really relatively basic attack vector. So I've noted at the bottom, attack vector, again, think of that as how it happened. Why did it go there? So an ESXi server, which is a type of server in their environment, wasn't updated properly. So a new kernel driver ransom towards that. Now, the approach that they took, they updated malicious kernel drivers signed by stolen certificates, which allowed them to then pull information out of MGM, which led to ransomware, which led to exfiltration, all that sort of stuff, extortion. The execution then, they use these signed drivers to evade detection. So what that means is your antivirus tools, your SIEM tools, they're able to go under the covers from them. They don't spot them in a way that usually they would. So they were smart about it. They tried to do it in a way that they could stay very low and silent and not be found by detection tools. And then that allowed a lot of the copy and the encryption to happen, pull the exfiltration of the data out. And then the impact, I'm sure a lot of people probably here have heard about it, huge impact to them as an organization, both financially and day to day as a business. Lots of personal data was exfiltrated, which is usually what they're trying to get to here, for a lot of their customers. So not a nice scenario to be in, but again, claimed by Black Cat, a huge ransomware group. And then the second one you'll see on the right hand side, Johnson Controls. So just pretty swiftly after MGM, again claimed by another group. They like to come out and express that they've done this, or this was their work, or it's from them. We spend a lot of time threat profiling as well in CloudGuard, so that's trying to understand these different attackers. They all have different behaviors of how they do things. They do it like this, or they exfiltrate like that, or usually they have common themes about them. They went for a £51 million ransom, dual layer attack and key systems. So that's what they're trying to get to here. They're trying to get to your critical assets, the stuff that keeps you functioning as a business. Whenever I say that, hopefully everybody's thinking, okay, well, it's this, and that for me. It's this, and that. That's exactly where you need to be, a place where you can easily identify what is essential for you to run as a business. What are those applications? Being aware of them. Are they protected? Is there any controls around them? Because you can see here, they went straight for their key systems. That's always the end goal here. It's privileged access, so accounts that have lots and lots of access and permissions, been able to get their way through the weeds and find the stuff that really matters. And then lots of encryption and stuff happening as well. Touched on a few more in here over sort of this year as well that you've maybe heard of. Things like the Russian-based Snatch ransomware from McDonald's, the Knights of Old enters administration after a ransomware attack. So it is huge, the things that can happen. A lot of these organizations put a lot of preparation in and a lot of time, sure, as you can expect, and it still shows that it sometimes can happen. So we're going to talk about incident response. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly so that we have time to get into the breakout sessions. But I think it's important to talk about before we go through the breakout. So for anybody that doesn't know about it, incident response is what happens when something goes bad, right? Something goes bad. What I would do in CloudGuard is say, hey, let's initiate an incident response now. There's a true positive incident that's happened that looks really bad. It's not a good situation, and let's go now. We need to pull everybody together, get on a call with the business, blah blah, all that sort of stuff. So we're going to work off the NIST framework. It's a different type of framework. There's a few of them out there. It takes 4 steps. First 4 steps is preparation. It's pretty much what we're doing today. We're talking about it, we're chatting about it, making ourselves aware, we're thinking about critical assets, critical data, things like an incident response plan. So do you have one? If you don't have one, it's thinking about, building one. If you do have one, it's okay, well, what does that look like? Do you improve on it? Do you review it? It's all about mitigating, so the success of making sure you're ready for an incident to happen. Other things, teams and resources. Do you have people that are ready for this? Do you have, is your team aware of what could potentially happen? Are they aware of their responsibilities in an incident response scenario? Other things, critical assets, access control, making sure permissions are right, doing an audit, doing a review of those. Skills and training, again, having the right people in the right place, and then technical support, having a partner that you can lean on if something was to happen. Detection analysis, largely sort of something that CloudGuard and BCN usually take out is, no, okay, we think something's happened, but has it actually? So let's confirm it. So that's things like I have been notified by the help desk that loads and loads of end users are saying that their files aren't working, or their laptops are locked out, or they've all got this one massive email from the CEO that is not the CEO, or someone's reporting that my account keeps sending them emails that I definitely didn't send. The stuff that's a bit fishy, the stuff that you would expect, it's can people recognize those symptoms? Do people understand that? Is also things from our perspective as a security partner is we would see things being flagged, we would see correlation, we would see behavior that we think is unusual. It's us flagging that to a customer saying, hey, we think this is strange, or we've seen X, Y, and Z happen. This is definitely not a good situation to be in. Let's start incident response. And then it's about what's next, executing your plan, documenting everything, being able to analyze the scope of the incident. And then containment, eradication, and recovery. So we sort of briefly touched on it. We're going to touch on it in the breakout session. So containment, being able to limit the damage from what's happening right now, prevent the spread. Eradication, the root cause, what actually happened, how did it happen, can you stop that? And then recovery is how do you bring everything back to an operational, healthy state again? And then post-incident activity, so lessons learned, what do you take away from it? How do you better it? You build a root cause analysis document, you do a lessons learned meeting, you might further your visibility, you might improve your IR plan, but the end goal is number 6, which is avoiding repeat incidents, not having the same thing happen again. Attackers love to try again using what they did first, because a huge amount of the time people don't find the real root cause and they don't fix it, and attackers go in again maybe a month, 2 months after. Simulate cyber attacks, then tabletops. For anybody that's never done one, it's really, really simple. We sit around a room, we take your IR plan and we talk through it, and then we give scenarios. So we say, hey, everybody that needs to be here has to be sort of in the room at the time. We'll sit down, we'll talk through a scenario, and we respond to it. What would we do if this was to happen? It's all about predictable response, making sure that people understand their roles or responsibilities. It's all about getting ready for one of these things to happen. It's preparation, which is key for incident response. Improve your readiness, further develop your IR program, or just your general security posture. Things to think about as we go through the simulation. So, who declares the incident? If it was you, do you know who would say, okay, we have an incident, or we don't? Do you know who would be the incident manager? Do you have any form of architecture diagrams? What does your network look like? Where should we cut off? Where do we, eradicate from? But before we get started, we're going to break out to 2 teams. So I will take team 1, and Vaughn is going to take team 2. Matt is going to break out all the sessions for us in the background. But you're going to see your screen change just a little bit. You'll go into, and then Vaughn will be in one room, I'll be in the other.
I think we're just waiting for everyone to come back in.
Hello.
Trickling in.
Good. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the sort of quick breakout sessions. We'll reconvene now back to sort of normal webinar operations, and I'll share, and Vaughn will take over now. So over to you, Vaughn.
Thanks, Connor. Yeah, so in the next couple of slides, we'll go over some different points, but first here we have some key takeaways. So it's really important not to be blindsided by a security incident. The guys in the breakout session, I'm sure they're sick of me mentioning about having your IR plan and being prepared for this situation if it does arise. So preparation is definitely key in that situation. You want to make sure that you have your IR plan in place and you know exactly what you're doing if something like this does arise. Next point, we have proactivity beats reactivity. So leading on from the first point, having your plan in place beforehand will allow you to make better decisions and not be reactive in these situations. Knowing your options and having them clearly outlined also allows you to make the best decision in these scenarios. So backup regularity and integrity also matter. It's not just about having backups, but ensuring that they're taken regularly and maintain their integrity as well. We had a good discussion in the breakout room about backup integrity. That is a main point to be taken away here too, because when crisis strikes, the reliability of your recovery process is going to help you out massively. Security awareness training. So in security, they say the weakest link in any organization is the human element. Ensuring your employees have a surplus of security awareness training. This helps put you in the best position possible, not to fall victim to some of these phishing emails that are coming through to your organization. Collaboration, enhancing defense. Discussing with employees that would make up your incident response team, what is expected of them and how they can assist if one occurs, and then also knowing who you're going to liaise with, maybe externally, if there are some actions that you can't perform as an organization. And then finally, all devices count. So I've seen a lot of companies only ask about security and monitoring for the most critical assets. Where this does keep the cost down, these devices are really where the breach starts. This lack of visibility should be carefully considered when identifying what needs securing in your environment. So now we're going into implement some proactive measures. So here we've just outlined some best practices. So employing best practices to prevent ransomware attacks is not only a proactive measure, but it should be a business imperative. So endpoint security and patch management. For this one, you should be hoping to have all your devices on some sort of security solution. Microsoft Defender is a great one for this, and then having backups, having patch management in place that can actually keep these up to date for the latest vulnerabilities. Backup and recovery. So regularly backing up critical data using the 3-2-1 rule is a great one to follow. So 3 total copies of data, 1 primary and 2 backup, 2 of which are held on different media or platforms, and 1 which is offsite. 3, network segmentation and zero trust. So segmenting the company network to contain breaches and adopting a zero trust model to treat every access request as untrusted. Another best practice you can follow and should be following is user awareness and training. Regular cybersecurity training for all employees. 5, email security and filtering. Implementing advanced email filtering solutions that scan for malicious attachments and links and blocking emails from suspicious sources. And then 6, finally, a recurring theme here, the incident response plan. So for this slide, we just want to touch on some automation, the automation advantage, and hopefully give you guys some indication of what can actually be achieved in these best practices and the security element with the use of automation. So phishing awareness, so having things in place such as automated phishing simulations and dynamic training updates is a great one to follow. Endpoint security, having auto patch management in place and real-time threat quarantining. Automated expertise, so using automation to auto triage and identify malicious activity, leveraging threat intelligence sources. So having the automation actually go off and query some of these massive databases of threat intelligence and refer that against activity that's been seen in your environment. And that can actually attribute this activity to, okay, this is from Conti ransomware threat actor, or this is from ICE ID, for example, instantly identifying and classifying the incident and upping the severity of that. Network defense, so if an incident has been identified, auto remediation of the malicious indicators, mitigating its spread throughout the environment. So if something does get classified as malicious, allowing automation to actually auto remediate that. So go off, maybe put a block in at the firewall for an IP address, or it locks a user account. Maybe it recycles some credentials and resets a password. All great ways that automation can help block off this further compromise from some of these threat actors. And then last but not least, backup and recovery. Scheduled automated backups with auto verification and isolation. So for this last slide I have here before I hand over to Curtis, just want to touch on some things that we think should be taken into consideration with a ransomware recovery plan. So just making sure your data is backed up constantly. We've mentioned about the integrity and the recurrence of the backups, making sure that's of utmost importance. How you would return affected systems to normal function. So are you going to repair from backups? Are you going to buy new devices? What's your plan around that? Prepare and test a ransomware incident response plan. It's all good to have your ransomware incident response plan, but have you tested it? Do you know where the faults are? Are you able to patch those gaps so you know it's going to be solid if that incident does actually happen? Communicating with stakeholders, so you know who you need to communicate with. Maybe it's your incident response team, maybe it's shareholders. Who do you need to go to in the case of an incident actually occurring? And following on as well, after the ransomware incident, are there any systems that can be put in place cybersecurity-wise to help disrupt the attack? So maybe visibility through things such as an IDS or maybe an MSSP, any automation in place that could block or remediate, like we mentioned on the previous slide. These are all things that maybe post-incident, once you have a good understanding of what's happened, you can take a look at and think, okay, this would have really helped us here. And then last but not least, improve your ransomware recovery plan. So if it does occur, you're iterating on it, you make it better and better every time until you have something solid that's going to work for your organization. And that's all my slides. I'm going to hand over to Curtis now, who's going to do a run through of an incident.
Thank you, sir. Connor, maybe best if we just stick to the incident scenario slide. I know we're really tight on time and people might be jumping into meetings. Yeah, just really to quickly wrap up, everyone. We work with BCN in another area. I mean, absolutely, step one in protecting from ransomware is having an incident response plan. That is the bare bones and the expectation of what's needed. Another area we work really closely with BCN is actually stopping the incidents in the first place. We provide a SOC and SIEM service called MXDR, delivered via CloudRod and BCN. Recently, we've introduced a live demonstration. What we wanted to do was bring that service to life, actually effectively communicate it to the BCN customers. And we do that via the live threat simulation. The incident scenario that is on screen, it runs through an account compromise, which Connor was talking about at the start of the webinar, stage one in that ransomware. So as that attacker and threat actor looks to move into your organization, move into your estate, how do we intercept that? How do we stop that from happening? Again, we're really tight on time, so I'll reach out following the webinar. I'm more than happy to schedule some live demos and read through that simulation.
Simon?
All right. Thanks, guys. Yep. Okay. Well, yeah, just again, thanks to everyone joining today, really. Obviously, hope you found it useful. Certainly some food for thought in there anyway, with just with regards to, incident response plans and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so as Curtis is saying, obviously we'll reach out in the next sort of few days and provide a link to the recording, all that sort of stuff, just in case there's anything that you kind of wanted to watch over again. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.